Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is Ryan Englin, and he is the CEO and founder of Core Matters and the creator of the Core Fit hiring system. He's also the author of the new book, Hire Better People Faster, and host of the Talent Tackle Box podcast. So he knows what he's talking about. And Ryan, you and I were introduced to each other by one of my favorite people, Dr. Sabrina Starling of tapthepotential.com. And I'm really glad she made the connection. We've had a conversation, and I think what you do is just so particularly important today. And I really like your approach. And I got to say, you can find Ryan at linkedin.com/in/Ryan Englin. That's RyanEnglin, Ryan Englin. And he's at the website corematters.com. And Ryan, I can't help but point out how angry personal trainers must be at you for having that URL, right?
I still have a little beef with the company that got Core Matters on Facebook, and so I had to get a different one.
Oh,
yeah,
that's funny.
No, a lot of people in the physical fitness space with that one. Yeah.
But tell us, Core Matters, I've got to assume that what you mean is that, who you hire is the core of your business, and how you treat your employees is the core of your business. Is that what you're
People are the core of your business, and that rolls into things like your culture, your communication style, your leadership style, the type of people you have on your team. That's core. That's foundational.
Yeah.
We don't talk about right people. We talk about people that fit your core.
Oh, that's really, really good. Well, now you did say, the magic words for me are leadership communications. So let's get to that, because tell me a little bit more. I really like the distinction you just made. Tell us a little bit more about that. And then let's talk about things like culture and the right fit and things like that, and how much of a part communication can play in that.
Yeah, I think that there's a bunch of different stats and studies that point to the fact that finding a new job is one of life's most stressful events. It is just straight up stressful. And anybody that's looked for a job in the last couple of years probably is traumatized and remembered.
Yeah, right.
And is willing to put up with a certain level of dysfunction inside of an organization to not have to do that again.
Right.
And what I found is that it really comes down to two things. Number one, how well or how effective you're communicating with them. And number two, how effective you are in setting proper expectations.
Okay.
You can do those two things well. It takes almost all the stress out of looking for work.
Okay. So give me some examples.
Yeah. So 2 out of 3 job seekers will never hear from a company when they apply.
Wow.
Which to me
just
is kind of
zero,
ironic. Nothing. Just ghosted. Which is ironic because employers all complain about all these job seekers ghosting them.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask them, do you reply? Do you let people know you're not going to be calling them? And they're like, no, I don't have time for that. Who ghosted who first?
Yeah, right.
It's a little ironic here. You're mad at them, but you've been ghosting job seekers for decades.
Yeah.
So that makes it stressful. Some of the habits that I think employers have, John, great. Love the interview. I think you'd be a great member of the team, but we got a couple more candidates we want to talk to before we make a decision. We'll be in touch. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's a pet peeve of mine. Because you know exactly what that means. Job seekers know what that means. It means thanks for playing. I just wasted my time. Go play elsewhere. Right? That's what that means.
Yeah.
But this is what employers do. And I don't know if it's, I think it's conflict avoidance, which isn't that telling about your culture, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, talk about, talk about a dysfunction, but talk about a standard human reaction, conflict avoidance, right?
Yeah. And so one of the things I talk to people about is pretend for a moment, and let's let's take the legal side out of this. We're not saying do this, but pretend for a moment that an interview is like a first date.
Yeah.
At the end of the first date, we play those same games. Oh, I had a great time tonight. I'll call you, as you're ripping up her phone number, right?
Yeah,
I'm never
right,
calling you. And we have those same habits there. But on the other side of it, how much does it hurt when you're the receiver of that and they don't call you back, or they don't talk to you, or they don't tell you the truth, or they don't set proper expectations? It hurts.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing's happening here. Now, as employers, we have this unique ability to be able to distance ourselves from our emotions. But these job seekers don't.
Yeah.
Right? Your people don't, because they got bills to pay. They got families to take care of. They got mouths to feed. They got hopes and dreams that you may be accomplishing as the entrepreneur, but they're just dreams for them. And they're just looking for an employer that will take them under their wing and say, let me help you accomplish your dreams.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We disconnect ourselves.
And, it's one of the things that I think is just one of the most consistent things that I've heard from experts in the field, like you and Sabrina, and, just every place that I listen. As an employer, you can really do yourself an enormous favor by having some vague idea of the hopes and dreams of your employees.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
And trying to help them make that part of what they're doing there too,
Yeah. I love what Dr. Sabrina says when she says work supports life, not the other way around.
Which I think is a hard lesson for a lot of us to learn, but including myself. But
I think theoretically, logically, most entrepreneurs are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But for some reason, they don't make the connection that same principle exists with your people.
Yeah.
For some reason, we don't make that connection. We're like, they're not performing very well and I don't have time to invest in them, so bye.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah. How would you like somebody to do that to you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we do that to the people all the time. So I think that's why it becomes one of those most stressful events for so many people, because of the games that are played, because of the uncertainty, because of the lack of communication, the lack of proper expectations. We just forgot to treat people like people somewhere along the line. And I have theories on why that is, but it doesn't matter. Like, we got to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I think that, there's an element of culture in that. And I think you and I would agree probably that culture eats strategy for lunch 8 days a week.
Sure.
Because strategy arises out of culture, like, hello, and, but culture seems pretty fluffy, I think, for a lot of people. Like, they're like, what do you mean company culture? Like, I mean, I love the saying, you've got a company culture, whether you know it or not. Right?
I agree.
So, what do you think about that, and how does it play into this?
Yeah. So I agree with everything you just said about company culture and being so important. We don't use the word culture a lot in the work that we do over at Core Matters. We don't. It's an overused word. It's ambiguous.
I agree with that. Yeah.
If there were 30 people in a room, I would have 700 definitions of what culture is. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so what I look at is two different things. Number one, I look at what we call your core vision. And your core vision is made up of three things. It is, where's your company going?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we care to go there? And how are we going to behave along the way?
That's great. Okay, good. I'm writing that down.
So that brings it down for us, because we've all heard Jim Collins talk about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
Well, his metaphor stops once he has the leadership team, right? You get the right people in the right seats and they can figure out where the bus is going to go, the bus being your business. Well, last time I checked, the bus had a lot more seats on it. And so as you build your team, as you grow your team, they're going to hop on this metaphorical bus with you. Yeah. And you want to make sure that people are excited about where you're going, excited about why you do what you do, and excited about hanging out with people that behave like them, so they have this sense of belonging. Because when the bus breaks down, when there's a detour, when you run out of gas, when a key employee leaves, when a key account leaves, when those things happen and the bus pulls over for a moment, do you want everybody running to go find another bus to get on? Or do you want it to stay on and help you get it on the road?
Yeah.
And so that's why that core vision is so important. So that's one side of it. And then the other side, we talk a lot about employee experience.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think you were going with strategy comes out of culture. Most companies focus on their customer experience. We've heard that term. It's a very vague term as well, but it's customer experience, how the customer feels. Is the customer happy? Is the customer always right? Well, who delivers on the customer experience? Your employees do.
Yeah.
So what if we stopped focusing on customer experience and we started focusing on employee experience, and then have our happy, engaged, motivated, empowered employees go out and take care of our customers?
Well, Richard Branson says, out of shareholders, customers, and employees, who's the most important? And like, there's lots of people would have lots of different answers, but Richard Branson says employees, because if the employees are happy, then the customers are happy. And if the customers are happy, then the shareholders are happy.
Yeah. But for a lot of people, I think that's backwards thinking.
Yeah.
We hear it all the time. Customer is always right. And there are a lot of companies that we know that they have that belief. We will do anything to take care of the customer. They'll put that on their website, where we do anything to take care of you, our most important customer.
Yeah.
Well, what's an employee see when they hear when they see that? So I'm going to work 90 hours of overtime, never see my family, never achieve my goals, because we're constantly bending over backwards to take care of the needs of the customer.
Yeah. That's a really important point. It reminds me of what a friend of mine, Dr. Mark Goulston said. As a leader, you've got to be able to set boundaries with employees. And now I'm making the connection with customers and clients, because if your employees see you and just having your boundaries like run over all the time, they can never feel safe. They can never trust you, and they can't really follow you the way that you would want them to be able to follow you as a leader.
Yeah.
So I think that's that's really an interesting twist on the customer is always right, because I have a little bit of that customer is always right gene in me too. But to think about how am I balancing that with, well, my employees matter, actually even more than that one individual potential customer, and how can I balance that? That's very interesting. So, as you said, if you have 7 people in a room, you get 300 opinions about what culture even means. I think it's a little bit fluffy, and it's a little bit like, squeezing the balloon. I think that storytelling is one of the key ways to impact culture, because I've come to start thinking about the stories that leaders tell when they're consciously chosen and well told, well chosen, well crafted, well told stories, leadership stories that illustrate like a value that really matters, or a principle that really matters, or an experience where something went wrong and the really powerful lesson that got learned. And I think when leaders tell those stories, that's how we learn from each other over our deep, deep, deep history as a species. And I think that's one of the most direct ways to access culture is through storytelling. So, it's kind of a statement, but would you agree? And if you do agree, what are a couple of your leadership stories, Ryan?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Again, like I said, we talk more about your core and less about culture, even though culture is part of your core. Once you know where you're going, why you're going there, and how you're going to behave along the way, we take that and we develop for our clients what's called a core story.
Oh, great.
Because storytelling is the oldest form of communication. It is super memorable. It's easy to pass on. It's easy to see myself in the story. So we create a core story, which is a culmination of where you're going, why you're going there, how you intend to get there, and why you're bringing people along the ride. Like sometimes I hear people tell me, I need to hire people. And I say, why? And they say, because I have more work. But why? Like serving more work doesn't help you achieve it. Doesn't, like, why is that important? Why do you want to grow the team? Why do you want to bring people with you? I know a lot of people that are very happy, especially in the trades. They own a truck, They've got a friend that helps them out on the weekends when they're making 6 figures a year. They have no people and they're loving life because they have all the time freedom and all that stuff. And then there's other people like, no, I've got 60 trucks on the road. I need more. Why? And so that core story is so important. Like, why are you bringing people along on this journey with you? Why are you not going by yourself? And so it's getting really clear on that and then being able to share that story with everyone else.
And what are some examples of some of the, I mean, you could give kind of conglomerate answers if you wanted.
Yeah.
But, what are some of the, because I think that, the trades is really interesting to me. And I do a lot of work with folks that are in the trades, and I've been working with, Kevin O'Connor from This Old House. And, he's really gotten me much more focused and thinking about the trades, and AI has got me much more focused in thinking about the trades. Cause I think that AI is coming for those jobs a lot later than it's coming for the white collar professional jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are the, what's an example of the vision and why go there and how to behave along the way that
if
really
I share
impressed
mine?
You maybe? Yeah, no, I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me share mine and then we can give some examples of what clients come up with. So the thing that I want to accomplish more than anything, and anybody that joins my team, is I want to make the trades cool again. The trades used to be cool.
Yeah.
Right? They used to be cool.
They're going to be cool again, dude.
Right?
They're going to be cool again.
Oh,
dude.
they will. We're going to have to. We're going to have to make this shift from elevating attorneys and professionals to elevating the people that are actually developing the infrastructure on which we now take for granted.
Yeah, totally.
And we don't. We look at people in the trades as lesser than as a society, and that's a real problem. And so we have to make it cool again. People are like, I don't want to be an attorney or a doctor. I want to be an electrician or a pipe lighter. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm thinking is I want to make the trades cool again. And anybody that wants to come along on that journey with me, like, let's go.
Yeah.
But why I want to do that? My dad was an owner operator. I grew up with an entrepreneurial father who was like, I want more time freedom. I want more money. I want more experiences with my family. I want more. And I'll never get that working for someone else. And we all know people like that.
Yeah.
And then they wake up a decade later and go, I work more hours. I make less money, less time freedom. That sucks.
Yeah.
But
can I tell you a quick little, remember where you are?
Yeah.
I actually wrote a song when I was like 20 or something, and I was so against working at a corporation 9 to 5. Right. And I think 9 to 5 really blew my mind. And I really hope that I find something better, And because I was just so looking down on people with those 9 to 5 jobs. And then what did I do? I ended up becoming an entrepreneur, and I worked 9 to midnight, every day, like on the weekends. And and it was, so anyway,
one of my favorite jokes is, a friend was complaining to me about how they worked 45 hours this week. And I think back and I'm like, I remember when I had a part-time job. Right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So keep going. Sorry.
That was my dad. Like, the business owned him a decade later. And when you're that far in, you don't really realize how you get out. So I used to go down to work with my dad on the weekends after school. He was on call all the time. I remember he had a brick phone before they were even popular. And I was like, I thought only Wall Street stockbrokers have brick phones. He's like, no, I'm on call. And as I got older, I realized that the issue that was keeping him back was he never was really taught how to hire and build teams. There's a lot of talk about this when you're a SaaS company and you've got ping pong tables and cereal bars and other things But when you're in a service organization where if people don't show up, work doesn't get done, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so no one ever taught him the skills. Great leader, taught me great principles and values. But the problem, no one ever taught him the tactics, the how to.
Yeah.
And how do I set expectations? How do I have these conversations? And so as I got older, I realized that that's what entrepreneurs were missing, was someone to actually teach them this stuff. The brass tacks, like bottom line, here's how to do it, not some theoretical book about getting right people on the bus and then figure out where you're going. And by the way, we're going to talk about another theoretical concept.
Yeah.
Jim Collins, I love your book, don't get me wrong, but it's like, it's not practical. So, so that's what I set out to do, was how do I teach entrepreneurs this? And then, so I wanted to help people like my dad that had this vision of doing more, but then realized that it wasn't about the entrepreneur. It wasn't about my dad. If my dad wanted to be more successful, he had to create an amazing workplace. So I want to create positive work environments for all of the employees. And we do that by implementing our system and teaching leadership principles and processes to the entrepreneurs and their leadership teams. And that's my core story. Like, that's why we do what we do, where we're going, why I want to build a team, because it's not enough for me to just say, okay, I helped one or two people. I want to help.
Yeah.
I want to change lives for so many. And I've got to grow a team because I'm only one person. I can only do so much.
Yeah. Well, and how do you behave on the way there, Ryan?
Yeah. For us, it's about always looking for ways to improve. Always looking for ways to improve. So I have this joke. When I interview someone to join my team, I let them know, I set proper expectations. I say, one of the fastest ways for me to fire you is to tell me that you do it that way because that's the way you've always done
it. Yeah.
Because that's counter to a behavior of, I'm always looking for ways to do it better.
Yeah. That's great.
Right? We need to create clarity with people. We need to be incredibly clear, because it's so easy. We see this all the time in organizations. The leader says one thing and then goes off and does something else, and people aren't able to make the connection why that's happening.
Right.
Well, clarity fixes that. And we look to always create great experiences. We always talk about our team. If we do this and it puts a greater burden on our team, will that impact our ability to serve more? And if it doesn't, does it impact our ability to deliver a greater experience for our clients? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm always focused on. How do I create that experience? I want to be that example and be able to deliver great experiences so they understand what it's like to do it with their employees.
Yeah.
And then finally, we serve people selflessly. You know, I believe in the platinum rule, treat others as they want to be treated. Really understand their behaviors, their motivations, what's most important to them. I tell leaders all the time, if you don't care that Jimmy is having marital problems, if you don't care that Susie's son is in trouble with addiction, if you don't care that Jim over there just got a health diagnosis, if you don't care about these things, you have no right asking them to care about your business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really meeting people where they are and understanding there's a human element to this. We got to treat people like people again. And I think that's something that has been lost in the trades. And that's one of the reasons it's not cool, is there's this perception that when you're in the trades, you're treated like a set of hands. You're hired hands. You're a helper. I mean, think about the names that they call people in the trades.
Yeah.
You know, they never say, hey, you're a very valuable, you're a beautiful person, you're an amazing person. They never say that. You're a helper, you're a set of hands, you're an apprentice. It's like all of these things that say, hey, you're just a cog in the machine. And if there's a problem with a cog in a machine, what do you do with a broken cog?
Yeah, you just replace it.
You replace it. And I think that's what we've done in the trades, is we've treated people like that. And so there's a reputation for that. And so we need to shift our minds and say, hey, we're here to serve these people so that we can go serve more.
Yeah, that's really great. We have an organization here in Salt Lake that does heating and air conditioning and plumbing and, stuff like that. And I have been consistently impressed by the people that show up and how much they care about us and the work they do. And they came and they put it, like, I actually bought a new furnace from them because I needed a new furnace. Like it was clearly, our old one was damaged in a way that was like letting carbon monoxide into the, like it had gotten old and rusted through in the wrong place and stuff. But when those guys put in the heater, they didn't seal up the hole into the garage, and mice got in that hole and found a way in the house because it's an attached garage. And it took us like 3 weeks to get rid of all the mice and,
Oh,
It was just a nightmare because my wife demands that we catch them alive and release them, right? So we would catch them and then go release them out in the woods behind our house, right? So it took us a long time. And I was so mad. And I was just, I mean, it was a mess and it was a drag and I was so mad. And they were so great with me that I'm still a client, and I, when companies, particularly in the trades, care about their people and they have a little thing that like when the person's going to come over 15 minutes before they get there, you get a little text with a picture of them and a little bio and, and a few like interesting facts about them that have nothing to do with the job. And I've been just really impressed. Like part of the reason I'm still a client is just to watch this develop, but it certainly has made my experience with them. Like now they're not replaceable. Like they're not just another cog because they don't act like just another cog.
Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing. I love those stories. And it's great that there's companies out there doing it, but as industry, we need to lock arms and do it together. And it's a big part of solving this problem. A lot of people come to me and they say, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. You've probably heard this, right? Nobody wants to work. Everybody's lazy. Everybody's entitled. Everybody wants to stay at home, work, jobs, all that stuff. And clients tell me all the time, like, nobody wants to work. I can't hire anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I ask them the question that's really simple. And they just like, okay. I say, how many people are you going to issue W-2s for this year? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, 85. How many people do you have on your team? 17. Doesn't sound to me like you have a hiring problem.
Yeah.
You hired 85 people this year. Sounds to me like you have a retention problem.
Yeah.
So to have this belief that people don't want to work, that people don't want these jobs, that there's no one out there, it's just, it's not correct. People do want the jobs. They just want to work for someone that cares about them. Is going to take care of them, is going to invest in them, and is going to train them and coach them and mentor them. And we don't have that right now in a lot of jobs. I mean, just look at the pandemic. I mean, how many employees? How would you feel, John, if someone said, "Hey, I'm closing down for a couple of months because we've determined you're non-essential"? Like, think about that. Like, what are you saying to an entire generation of good workers? You're non-essential, so go home. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm a human being. I'm essential in a whole bunch of ways. And so now we have entire industries that are flailing and don't know how to get people back because they spent 3 years telling them they were non-essential.
Yeah.
I don't want to come back and work for someone that told me I was non-essential.
Yeah, no.
You know? So
totally.
I mean, that's some of the stuff that when we talk about leadership, I really want you to take a step back for a second, get in their shoes and go, how are they going to receive this information?
Yeah.
Because in our heads as entrepreneurs, it makes sense. It's logical. They don't always think that way.
Well, I mean, and I tell people all the time, every single time I ever do a training, I say communicating with human beings is not logical.
Yes.
You may have noticed, right? It's not logical. It's biological.
Yeah.
And once you understand the biology, you can make it logical again. But logic by itself it's necessary. What you say has to make sense and all that stuff, but that's not enough, right? It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And you've got to think about, Seth Godin says communication is the transfer of emotion, not the transfer of information. I mean, you're going to transfer information anyway, but if you think about communication as the transfer of emotion, and then you look back at how maybe this group just talked, this leader just talked to his employees or her employees, what was the emotion in that? You're not essential, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you just think about it, I mean, we talk about stories and, we don't have to go down the faith path, but, Jesus said that, the things that comes out of a person's mouth come from the heart. Yeah. And I think most leaders, before they speak, they need to take an 18-inch journey from their head to their heart and say, okay, how am I coming across? Like, what is being communicated and what emotions are being communicated and transferred, just like you said. And I think we forget that. We get so wrapped up in the day-to-day and so wrapped up in of all of the things that we have to check off today before we get to go home at the end of the day, that we forget to take a pause and take a breath and say, hey, it's time to go on that 18-inch journey from my head to my heart. Now speak.
Yeah. Well, let me play devil's advocate. Like here you are in the trades that are not quote unquote cool.
Yeah.
And you've got all these helping, helpers and sets of hands. How do people, what is an example of someone in the trades that you've worked with who's created a core vision and a why go there and a how do we behave on the way there that did inspire and did turn things around?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. Society tells most people college is plan A, the trades are plan B, right? It's considered lesser than.
Yeah.
There are some people, and God bless them, that desperate people sometimes make bad decisions. And those bad decisions sometimes follow them around for life. And when that happens, plan A often isn't an acceptable plan anymore. You got to take plan B.
Yeah.
And so the trades are there to take on a lot of these guys. I mean, we work with companies that are involved in reentry programs, work with religious groups. I mean, sometimes the people in the trades, they're good people. They just made a bad decision. And so we've got one client that realized that they were bringing a lot. So their plan was, the industry is aging. The people that have all the knowledge, the people that have done this for a long time, they're all aging out. We've got to bring in a fresh group of people. And so they would bring people in, fresh group of people, and they were real early on struggling with turnover. So these guys would show up, most of them were men. These guys would show up, they'd work for a day or two, and then they'd quit. They'd leave. They'd ghost you. Like they didn't, no call, no show, you're not getting a hold of them anymore. And when we started digging into it, we looked at it, and what they were doing was they wanted to get, these guys were entry level. Like, what can an entry level person do right away to bring value to the company? And it was, let's put a shovel in their hand and let them dig, because that was part of the work. Yeah. Put a shovel in their hand and let them dig for 8 hours. You're taking a kid out of high school, someone out of college, someone who's going, maybe they've been sitting on the couch playing video games for the last 9 years, and you put a shovel in their hand, you ask them to dig for 8 hours. It's not that they're not calling you back because they don't want the job. They're not calling back because they can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
That didn't hurt.
Yeah.
And so when you take a step back and you say, let me go in their shoes, well, maybe we should do an hour a day until they've got some blisters. So these muscles have been moving and joints have been moving in a way they haven't moved before. Yeah. So they made that shift, and they said, and all of a sudden people started sticking around. And then they said, you know what? We do realize a lot of these guys either have or are going to make bad decisions. And their choice was, they decided, we're going to start a mentoring program. And what we're going to do is we're going to have one or two of our leaders, and we're going to have all these guys get together on a Zoom call once a week. And the mentor's topic of choice was, he wanted to turn it into a Bible study, because he believed that if I can teach people biblical principles, they'll start making better decisions. If I can connect them with other men who have either been where they're at or have come through what they're about to go through, they're going to look at those guys and say, hey, can you help me? Versus abandoning them, running away and saying, oh, everybody else has abandoned me, so this employer is going to as well. Yeah. Engagement went up, retention went up. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like you go, if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, I'm going to go start a Bible study tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. Right? Yeah. This stuff takes time. They have to trust you. They have to know that you're different than other employers that they've worked with. I mean, some of these people, some of these kids, they've been rejected by society. They've been rejected by employers because they made one bad decision. That's why reentry programs are so powerful. I think a lot of times people turn away from people that have a criminal past and say, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that. Yeah. But sometimes people just need to give them a break. It takes really strong, intentional leaders to be able to do that. And, we do a lot in the construction space, and a lot of the companies that we work, especially larger ones, they partner with local prisons. They partner with the schools when these kids are challenged, and they look at that and they say, hey, you know what? We can take these guys and gals under our wings. We can coach them. We can mentor them. We can teach them to be amazing contributors to society, but also amazing employees. But it takes a strong leader to be able to do that. It takes an intentional, self-aware leader to be able to have those conversations and want to do that stuff. Yeah, boy. And those are key, intentional and self-aware. Yeah, right? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for us, we dabble in some of the leadership stuff, but it's people like yourself and others out there that are teaching these leadership principles and being able to coach and guide the leaders that are making this happen. I mean, that's such a
Mm.
critical piece to being able to make the trades cool again. That's why I love meeting
Yeah.
people like you and having conversations like this.
Yeah. Well, and me too. And I love being taken into that world because you know, I mean, now it's getting a little like philosophical maybe, but I have been really noticing and thinking a lot about the political division. And I don't want to go into politics, but what I do want to
Yeah.
go into is how much of a gulf there seems to be between, you know, whatever you want. Like, I really, really don't mean this to be political, but like, I don't know what other words, like kind of the liberal elites coastal, thing. And then the more blue collar working class center of the country and, the blue collar portions of big cities and things. And just, and I think that a lot of people are like, look, what are you talking about? Like, everybody's got a cell phone. Like, there's no such thing as a poor person anymore on some level, right? And blah, blah, blah. And yet there's such a gulf between the experiences of these two sets of people. And it's, I think it's a real issue. So I'm grateful for the chance to get taken into the world of the trades and thinking about the trades and who you're hiring as a construction company and what your hiring challenges are. They're different than the hiring challenges of like the top level at Johnson & Johnson or something, And I just think that knowing more about each other is really important. And I think it's really great to hear that. And I love that there are people out there in the trades that are hiring people who maybe have made a bad decision and who are giving them this kind of mentoring as part of their job. I mean, that of course they're going to be, people are going to want to work for them more, like that I can see the dramatic benefit. And I bet those people are going to make the customers a lot happier, like Richard Branson would want,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it's really cool. I appreciate hearing about this. So what else should I ask you about? Like, what's something I haven't asked you about that you'd like to talk about, Ryan?
For me, I think that the way we solve this problem is it's got to start with leadership. We've talked a lot about leadership. I'd love to share a couple of tactics, like bring it down a little bit and say like, now, how do we do this stuff? Less on the leadership principles and guidance. I think for me, the biggest thing is take that 18-inch journey from your head to your heart. And now don't be afraid to be emotional. Don't be afraid to have that biological conversation like we talked about. I think those are all absolutely critical to being effective leaders and being able to pull this off. But now I want to take a step and just take a couple of minutes and share a couple of tactical things, some things that I want people to shift their thinking a little bit. I want to make the trades cool again. And so one of the ways we have to do that is we have to figure out what cool means, right? We have to figure out what cool means. And a lot of people tell me, oh, no one's good out there. There's no one good out there. I can't find anybody good to work for me. And I really want you to sit on this for a second and think, if you're struggling to find good people, if you're struggling to attract good people, just consider for a moment that you may not be, as an organization, attractive to good people.
Yeah.
Super common sense, right?
I mean, I couldn't agree more, Ryan. And in my training, I talk a lot about mirror neurons and how they're always mirroring you.
Yeah.
Right. So, think about that grumpy person, they walk in the room and everybody gets grumpy and they grump around for a while and everybody's grumpy. And then the minute they leave, we're all fine again.
Yeah.
But everywhere they go, they think everyone's grumpy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can't attract good people, are you being good people is my question.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And think about that too. We had a client years ago and they put on this false front. Like, remember I talked about expectations. We are obsessed with first impressions. We are obsessed with highlight reels of all the cool stuff that's going on in our lives in this society.
Yeah.
People compare themselves to social media all the time. And I was like, that's not real.
No.
Forget the fact that it's staged. Maybe they really did have that much fun that one time in the last 12 months, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
And so much of it is staged. We're so focused on first impressions that we as employers, we as leaders often put too much of our best foot forward. And then when people join our team, they go like, oh, that's not what I thought I was signing up for. Well, then what happens? The employer's like, well, that's not who I thought I hired. Well, who went fake first? Like,
right.
And so we had a client years ago, and they actually had a guy on the team. It was actually the owner's brother. And they actually scheduled interviews when he wasn't going to be at the office because he knew that the brother would cause problems. And I was like, but aren't those people going to have to work with him? Well, yeah, but they don't need to know how messed up he is now. I'm like, no wonder you're not keeping people. But we do it all the time, right? We do it all the time. We had a client years ago that would drop F-bombs in the interview. He's like, we curse a lot around here. They got to be comfortable with that. And these poor people, like, just dropping F-bombs out of the blue. He looks over at me and goes, what'd you think of my interview? I go, I'm flabbergasted. Like, help me understand what you're thinking. He's like, they need to be comfortable with it. I said, great. It's who you are. You own it. I love it. I want to put F-bombs in your job ad. I want to post online that you curse that much.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Why not? So you'll lie to them and you'll put this false front, in front, and then they show up and then you show who you really are. And you wonder why you're struggling to hire and keep people.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's like dating profiles,
it's
right?
Dating profile.
Like,
yeah.
You shouldn't put your best foot forward on a dating profile. You should put like all the truth about you on a dating profile, because it's not like you are going to be able to date everyone in the world that might like the fake you.
Yeah.
You want to date, if you're really serious, you want to date the one person or two people that would maybe even want to go out with the real you, right?
And absolutely agree. But if you put no emphasis into who you are, how you present yourself, and you come across like an axe murderer, don't be surprised if no one shows up.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I look at an employer's website or their Yelp reviews or something, and I'm like, there's no way on God's earth that I would come work for you. Like, never.
Yeah.
But they don't think about that because they're so focused on what the customer sees. They forget to think about what's the job seeker seeing.
That's interesting.
So those are some tactics. And I'll leave you with one real quick tip, because I'm sure there's people going, oh, can he just tell me how to get a couple of good people? Here's one thing I want to leave you with. Employee referral programs are the best way to attract and retain great people. Yeah. And it happens because Gallup has learned that employees are 6 times more likely to be engaged if they have a best friend at work. Who do you refer when you're referring an employee? Great. Right? You're referring a friend. So give your people opportunities to refer their friends. It builds in that best friend at work. And you can then start growing a really effective team. Now, let go of the fact, because I know there's people listening going, yeah, but if it's all friends working there and one of them leaves, all of them are going to leave. Start treating your people better and maybe they won't leave. So let go of that fear.
Yeah.
But here's why employee referral programs don't work. And this is something I want you to do. 2 reasons. Number 1, we don't equip our people how to have the conversations, right? You go to an iron worker and you say, tell your friends. He's like, oh, I'm not a recruiter. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. And number 2, we never give incentive to the person taking the risk. Remember, looking for work is one of life's most stressful events. So if I work for you and I want to go call my buddy and I say, hey, Scott, I want to let you know my boss is hiring. I know you haven't been super happy at work, but it's not so bad you're ready to quit. Do you want to quit your job and come work over here? Do you think your wife would go for that? Yeah. That's the conversation we're asking them to have.
Yeah.
And then we top it off with the cherry, which says, and if you do it, my boss will give me $250 after you're here 90 days.
Yeah. Right. Yay.
Like, that's why they don't work. So really think about that and make sure that you're getting the right message in front of the right people at the right time. Make sure you're equipping your people to really do effective referrals, and it will help you grow your team immensely. But keep in mind too, when my buddy goes to his wife and says, hey, I'm going to quit my job because Ryan's going to make $250. What's in it?
Yeah, right.
What's in it for them? right? PTO is a big one in the trades. For some reason, we don't give it out very often. We hold on to it. Imagine that my buddy went to his wife and said, hey, you know how you want to go see your parents, but I haven't been able to afford to take time off work. If you let me get out of working where I'm at and go work somewhere else, which I think is going to be a better company, they're going to give me 3 days PTO. I can use them however I want. We can go see your parents.
Yeah.
Think about that. He's the one taking the risk. He's the one putting his family's livelihood in jeopardy. He's the one that's got to go to his spouse and sell her on it.
Yeah.
Let's give him something to sell her with.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a couple of tips, just a couple of things to think about.
Yeah, it's really brilliant. It's really good. I mean, you know, in the speaking world, we say know your audience, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that in the hiring world, it applies. Know your audience, like know who put yourself in their shoes for a few minutes and think about what is really going on over there from their perspective, not yours. Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it can, that's great. Well, I love that. Well, so listen, I promised I'd get you out of here before the top of the hour. Yeah. So I love the tips. I mean, do you, anything else like that? I think this is gold.
Oh, another one that's real easy. Another one's real easy and no one thinks about it. No one thinks about this. For some reason, no one thinks about it. So most people want to hire someone who's employed already. Fair? Most people don't want the person sitting on their mom's couch playing video games all day. So that means, John, if I offer you a job and you accept, you've got to go tell somebody. You got to tell your spouse. You've got to tell friends. You've got to tell the friends at work, at your current job. You got to tell your boss. What do most employees do? Hey, John, it was great to meet you. I'm so excited to have you on board. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then you turn around, you walk out the door, and now you're on your own for 2 weeks. You have no idea if I'm a better employer. You have no idea if I'm going to have an opening for you in 2 weeks. You have no idea. You are taking a lot of risks in the next 2 weeks with almost no support. Because I'm not going to talk to you for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is such a good point.
And then you and I both know that you're going to show up in 2 weeks. I'm like, John, you made it. Hey, and this is what you're going to hear. We don't have your login set up. We don't have a car for you yet. We don't have any work for you because you know what? Frankly, we didn't know if you were going to make it. So we didn't want to do all this work on the off chance that you weren't going to show up. So sit tight, shadow these people for a couple of days. We're super excited to have you here, even though we're just saying it. We're not showing it. And what do? You go, I don't know if this was the right decision for me. So think about that 2 week periods when you're both waiting, because it's waiting period. We call it the wait. And what we want you to do is we want you to create very strategic touch points during the time when that candidate, that new employee is waiting. So I'll leave you with this, but consider testing this the next time you hire somebody. And you say something like, hey, John, so I know you got to go tell your boss. I can't imagine the amount of stress that puts on you and your family and everything else. You don't know how he's going to react. You know, he might walk you out the door, which, by the way, if that happens, call me. I'll start you early. Okay. No reason you got to wait. You want to take a week off? That's awesome. Just let me know. I'm happy to start you early because I know sometimes your boss is going to walk you out the door. He might offer you $2 more, $3 more an hour. What do you think is going to happen if he does that? I mean, I'd hate for you to take it and I miss out on you. So what can I do to support you in that? And what your response going to be, and have a conversation with them and maybe remind the employee why they're choosing to leave their boss. Remember, you said you didn't like the overtime. You didn't like the uncertainty. You didn't like the way he communicated with you. Is that going to be worth $2 more an hour? Like if you do the math, it's only $4,000 a year. It's like $400 a month. Is that worth it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And coach them through this stuff because they don't do this a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And then get commitment from them. So John, when are you going to let them know? Oh, you're going to tell them at 8:00 tomorrow morning. I'm rooting for you, man. Imagine that you got a text message from me at 7:00 in the morning that says, hey, John, I know you're about to have a big conversation. I'm rooting for you. We are pumped to have you over here. Like, what's it going to do?
Think of the difference. Yeah.
Huge difference.
Think of the difference.
And it's like, how hard is it to do that? It's not.
Not.
But we don't because we're busy. I checked off the box that John's joining the team. I'm filling that job and I'm going to go back to being busy. And then what's going to happen? John's not going to show up. or John's only going to last a couple of weeks because he doesn't really want to be there because he doesn't feel like he's appreciated or valued. He's going to go find someone else to work for. And then we got to do it all over again. And the reason we're busy is because we don't take the time to nurture and care for our people and meet them where they're at and support them and care for them along that journey of uncertainty, which is really what we're asking them to go through.
Yeah. Which brings us kind of full circle to why you do this in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
Watching your dad just 10 years in being run by the business instead of running the business, right?
Yeah. I want to break that cycle. And it's not hard to do. Yeah. You just have to be intentional, and you have to be willing to maybe take a look inside and change a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Listen, I think all of us should be willing to do that,
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate you joining me, Ryan. And I appreciate the deeper look inside the world of the trades. And I think it's really cool what you're doing. And thank you. Cause I think that what you've said and what you've pointed out and what you've pointed to is really valuable for any employer. It doesn't matter where,
It's true.
Because we are, after all people.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, so you can find Ryan at corematters.com. You can find him on linkedin.com/in/Ryan Englin, and take a peek at his book, Hire Better People Faster, and you will be able to hire better people faster. And, I think probably the subtitle is, and have them stick around.
And have them stick around. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, Ryan. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks to you for listening. And we'll see you next week on speaklikealeader.show. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.